You are sitting in a waiting room right now, or you have been recently. Plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, a number in your hand, and somewhere behind a closed door, a stranger with a degree is about to tell you what is wrong with your body. That is so normal to you that you have never once stopped to think about how strange it is. For almost all of human history, there were no waiting rooms. There were no degrees. There were no closed doors with a trained professional behind them. There was just you, your body, and a world that was trying to kill you every single day. And somehow, your ancestors survived it. Not just survived, they built civilizations, crossed oceans, raised children, and grew old. So what did they actually do when they got sick? The answer is far stranger and far more sophisticated than you have ever been told. Start with the oldest evidence we have. Not scrolls. Not cave paintings. Bones. When paleoanthropologists examine ancient skeletal remains, they find something unexpected. They find healed injuries. They find bones that broke and then knit back together. They find signs of infection that the body fought off. They find people who lived for decades with conditions that should have killed them quickly. Degenerative joint disease, missing teeth, severe trauma to the skull. These people did not just lie down and die. Something, or someone, helped them. Researcher Eric Trinkhaus spent decades studying Neanderthal remains and found that many individuals had survived catastrophic injuries, crushed limbs, fractured eye sockets, broken ribs, with evidence of long-term care and recovery. You cannot recover from a crushed arm alone in the wild. Someone brought you food. Someone kept you warm. Someone stayed. That is the first medicine, not a plant, not a ritual, a person who stayed. But the plants came next, and they came far earlier than you think. In 1960, archaeologist Ralph Selecki excavated a Neanderthal burial site in Shanidar Cave in what is now Iraq. Buried with one of the skeletons was a dense layer of pollen, not random pollen, clustered, intentional deposits of specific plants: yarrow, groundsel, ephedra. Plants with real, measurable medicinal properties. Plants that are still used in medicine today. The burial was dated to roughly 60,000 years ago. The interpretation has been debated. Some researchers argue the pollen was carried in by animals or wind, but others, including Selecki himself, believe it represents something profound, a deliberate act of care, of ritual, of knowledge. Because here is the thing. Ephedra is not a flower you pick because it is pretty. It is bitter. It is pungent. Nobody stumbles onto ephedra and thinks it smells nice. You use ephedra because you know what it does. And to know what it does, someone had to teach you, which means there was a teacher. And before the teacher, there was the first person who noticed. That is how it worked for tens of thousands of years. Observation, trial, memory, transmission. Someone got sick. Someone tried something. It worked, or it did not. And the knowledge was passed forward, generation to generation, not in books, but in stories, in ritual, in apprenticeship. By the time you reach ancient Egypt, roughly 5,000 years ago, that accumulated knowledge had become something extraordinary. The Ebers Papyrus, discovered in 1873 and dated to around 1550 BCE, is one of the oldest surviving medical documents in the world. It contains over 700 remedies. It describes diseases of the stomach, the heart, the eyes, the skin. It recommends specific plants, minerals, and animal products for specific conditions. Some of them, analyzed today by pharmacologists, actually work. Willow bark, the original aspirin. Honey, a proven antimicrobial. Garlic, demonstrably antibacterial. Castor oil, a real laxative. These were not random guesses. This was the product of thousands of years of careful, systematic human observation. But the Ebers Papyrus also contains prayers, incantations, instructions for invoking the gods alongside the physical remedies. And this is where most modern people stop taking ancient medicine seriously. They see the ritual and they dismiss everything around it. That is a mistake. Because the ritual was not separate from the medicine. It was part of it. And there is a growing body of scientific evidence that it worked. Not because the gods answered, but because of something your body does all on its own. In 2015, neuroscientist Fabrizio Benedetti published a landmark analysis of placebo research showing that the ritual of healing, the ceremony, the authority of the healer, the expectation of recovery, triggers measurable neurochemical changes in the human body. Real changes: endorphin release, immune modulation, reduction in cortisol. The belief that you are being healed actually accelerates healing. Your ancient ancestors did not know the word neurochemistry. But they knew that a healer who performed a ceremony got better results than one who did not. And so the ceremony stayed, and the herbs stayed, and the knowledge stayed. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 2000 BCE, the healers were called Ashiphu and Asu. The Ashiphu diagnosed illness through omens and ritual. They identified what had gone wrong spiritually or cosmically. The Asu treated the body with physical remedies, poultices, tinctures, plant-based medicines. They worked side by side, not because one was superstition and one was real, because both addressed different layers of what it means to be sick. When you are sick, you are not just a body with a broken part. You are a person who is scared, a person who does not understand what is happening, a person who needs to feel that someone knows what to do. The ancient world understood this intuitively. Modern medicine is slowly relearning it. Look at Hippocrates. You know his name. You know the oath. But what you probably do not know is that Hippocrates, writing in ancient Greece around 400 BCE, was doing something radical for his time. He was insisting that disease had natural causes. Not divine punishment, not demonic possession. Natural causes, environmental factors, diet, air quality, lifestyle. He was building a framework that sounds entirely modern. But Hippocrates also believed in miasma, the idea that bad air caused disease. He was wrong about the mechanism, but right about the observation. People living near swamps got sick more often. He could see it. He just could not see the mosquitoes. That is what ancient medicine was. Correct observations, wrong explanations. And over centuries, the observations survived, and the explanations slowly got refined. The ancient Greeks gave you the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and a complete system for understanding imbalance and health, wrong in its details, but built on something real. The idea that the body is a system, that imbalance causes disease, that restoring balance restores health. That is not entirely wrong. That is actually the foundation of a lot of modern thinking about inflammation, the microbiome, and systemic health. In ancient China, roughly the same era, a different framework was developing. The concept of qi, vital energy flowing through pathways in the body, acupuncture, herbal medicine, dietary therapy. The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Internal Medicine, compiled around 200 BCE, describes physiological principles with a sophistication that still impresses researchers today. A 2012 review published in the journal Pilo Oni found that several plants described in ancient Chinese pharmacopoeia contain active compounds that have since been isolated and proven effective in clinical trials. The ancients found them by watching, by trying, by remembering. And in the ancient Americas, in sub-Saharan Africa, in the islands of the Pacific, the same process was happening. Different plants, different rituals, different frameworks, but the same human impulse: observe, experiment, remember, teach. Your ancestors were not stumbling through the dark. They were running experiments every day of their lives. Now here is the part nobody tells you: the surgery. In 2020, archaeologists in Borneo announced the discovery of a 31,000-year-old skeleton with a surgically amputated lower leg. The bone showed signs of careful, deliberate cutting, not trauma, not an animal attack. And the individual had survived the surgery and lived for years afterward. 31,000 years ago, someone on the island of Borneo performed a successful amputation and kept their patient alive through the recovery. Trepanation, drilling or cutting into the skull, has been found in skeletal remains from every inhabited continent, dating back tens of thousands of years. Many of these skulls show bone regrowth around the opening, which means the patient survived. Some skulls show multiple trepanations. The same patient operated on more than once, living through it each time. These were not accidents. These were procedures. Planned, executed, survived. When you pull back and look at all of this together, something becomes very clear. Your ancestors were not waiting for modern medicine to save them. They were saving each other. With plants, with rituals, with surgery, with presence, with knowledge accumulated over hundreds of generations and passed down with extraordinary care. The waiting room is a recent invention. The healer is not. Every time your immune system kicks in before you even notice you are getting sick, it is running a program refined over millions of years of bodies that fought back and won. Every craving your body sends you when you are ill, for warmth, for sleep, for certain foods, is ancient.
Archaeologists in Borneo announced the discovery of a 31,000-year-old skeleton with a surgically amputated lower leg.
Is that healing has been happening in human bodies, tended by human hands, guided by human knowledge, for longer than you can imagine. The waiting room is new. The waiting, for someone to stay, to try, to remember, is as old as your species.